Hi, I'm Tom Marks with the Marks Law Firm, and welcome to the Healthy Family Law Attorney. Today, we're going to talk about healthy co-parenting in collaborative law. And I have as my special guest, Teresa Parnell. Before I get started, Teresa, I want to say that my passion is providing hope and help to families navigating the family law process in a healthy way. So, Teresa, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
You're welcome. We've known each other probably coming on 30 years, or should I not say that?
No, that's okay. I think that's about right. I think neither of us are quite sure the number, but it's definitely more than 20. I think it is close to 30.
Yeah, probably. We've been doing this a long time. Mm-hmm. So tell us about yourself and your private practice.
Well, I am a psychologist by training, but I've always worked in one way or another in conjunction with the court system. That was always of interest to me. And through the years, worked with a lot of families who were, had situations that brought their family to court, either a divorce or a paternity situation where they were not married but had children together. Worked many times with juveniles who were getting in trouble, and so worked in the juvenile justice area. Worked with some adults who had gotten themselves in criminal trouble as well. And then also with families who were struggling with abuse and neglect sort of situations. And so I had all of that background, and over the years have really just focused only on working with families who are in the family law system in some way, because I felt like there was a need there for individuals who are willing to work with attorneys and other folks who work in the family law arena, other professionals. And that's sort of where I guess perhaps similar to your opening, wanting to provide hope and assistance to families so that they could navigate through what is one of the most difficult transitions a person and a family can go through, a divorce or not living together any longer if they're not married. And so I wanted to participate in that, hoping to provide some input that helps them move through that in a healthy manner.
Well, that's good. I know that you've gone through some transition in your practice, as I think we all are. You and I have had some litigation cases in the past, not so distant, but in the distant past, where you acted as a social investigator, and you were in the courtroom a fair amount. But you've transitioned your practice into three areas now. And I know we're talking about collaborative, but what are the three areas that you are focusing on today?
Well, I spend my time professionally doing collaborative law cases, mediation, and co-parenting therapy, almost exclusively those three areas. And the transition for me really was thinking through the work that I was providing to families who were litigating their cases. I noticed, from my perspective, some things that were really troubling to me as a professional, even though I can see the value in the services that are provided, like social investigations or parenting plan evaluations or parenting coordination or just general psychological evaluations for the various court systems that I was mentioning. It seemed like those services often took a long time, cost an awful lot of money, and still just left the decisions for a family in the hands of somebody else. So a report was written, information was provided to the court, and still months or sometimes years later, a judge was then in the situation of deciding for this particular family, things both big and small, about how the family was going to transition forward. And so I decided I wanted to participate in services that helped families earlier in their, for instance, divorce process, earlier meaning not months or years down the road, but shortly thereafter the decision's actually made, services right then when they really need them, and also services that helped people maintain really ownership of the decisions that need to be made in this transition. And so I started deciding professionally that I needed to dedicate myself to learning more about how to be a good provider of services in collaborative law and co-parenting therapy and mediation. And so it took a few years to transition from that other style of working, but I have made that transition, and it's very satisfying for me professionally. And I think it's really helpful, more helpful to families ultimately.
Right. And I would have to agree. Collaborative law is so fundamentally different than litigation. I mean, I can't tell you how many cases that I've finished where the parties can sit down next to each other at the signing meeting and sign the documents together. A lot of times they drive together and they leave together, and they're going to be able to co-parent the children so much better. There's so much less conflict and acrimony. Co-parenting is so much better. So tell me how the co-parenting part of your practice dovetails into the collaborative part of your practice.
Well, co-parenting generally, is this concept that one of the aspects of being a couple that has a child or children is that we have to figure out how to reconcile our differences in parenting ideas or ideals, our way of approaching things, and to try to help each other be the best parents we can be, but also provide input when we're concerned that maybe a particular approach to parenting is not something that we can support or something that's best for kids. So there's a co-parenting relationship, all along the way before we go through and no longer living together or not being married. And so, but often co-parenting is one of the areas of conflict that is part of the decision to divorce. We just don't agree on how to approach the children or certain things that have been said or done in the parenting of the children. And so sometimes people think, okay, I'm going to leave this relationship and I'll just parent how I wish. That creates some problems for children and doesn't really help that healthy transition that we're talking about today. And so regardless of what method you use to get divorced, there is this co-parenting relationship that needs to be considered that's already existing before this big transition that we need to pay attention to beyond this concept of I'll just parent how I wish to parent once he or she can't tell me how to parent any longer. So it's embedded in all the work that I do. But in collaborative, we have this opportunity. It's back to what I said earlier of wanting to be involved in services that get help to families earlier in the process. So what happens in collaborative, even though it can be uncomfortable or emotionally difficult at times, parents have an opportunity to begin talking about their co-parenting relationship and their parenting decisions from the time that separation process begins. Not months later after they have been conversations have been separated by the legal system, but from the very beginning, sitting at the table or now in this Zoom space, working with a mental health advisor, a financial advisor, legal advisors, helping them wrap their head around all of the things that have to transition. And within that, wrapping their head around this concept of what's our co-parenting relationship going to look like going forward. And I definitely believe that children are able to get through this big of a transition in a much healthier manner with a greater sense of well-being when parents have paid attention to their parenting and to their co-parenting relationship. And that's supported as well by some of the data that we have.
Yeah, and I really like that word healthy. Obviously, it's part of what we're about here. So in the collaborative process, one thing I really, really like is the way we start out with setting goals, and the two parties, partners or husband and wife, actually put up on the whiteboard, whether we write it on the whiteboard or oversized Post-it note or whatever, what are their goals? And what's really affirming to me in the majority of my collaborative cases is they'll write, well, I want to do what's best for the kids, or I want to make sure the children are protected from the litigation, or I want to set up a college fund for the kids, or maybe I want to stay in the house until at least the youngest child is out of the house or in high school or something.
Mhm.
So then they realize both partners have put the same goals often on that whiteboard or that Post-it note. And it's such a better place to start than, say, certainly litigation, but even in mediation where you have this position-based bargaining. I know you do mediation also.
Do.
So obviously that's what we call an ADR, or an alternative dispute resolution, something different than litigation, which is healthier also. So talk to us a little bit about what you do in mediation, and then maybe a little bit about how that differs from collaborative law.
So there are definitely benefits to mediation similar to collaborative in what you've just described, for instance, in terms of it being another way to go about resolving the differences that are there, that allow parents to, or folks who don't have children as well, to retain some decision making in their overall divorce process, and to have conversations around some decisions that need to be made. So that benefit is there. But the differences in how mediation is usually conducted and how collaborative is usually conducted are pretty significant. For instance, often you pointed out in collaborative, there's an opportunity from the beginning to start to talk about what's important to this particular couple, or if they have children, this particular set of parents. And if they have children, then wrapped in there is going to be the importance of preserving their children's well-being and doing what's best for them and taking care of their needs. That doesn't happen usually in the same way in mediation. And one of the reasons is mediation is sort of set down into our litigation model usually. So what happens is folks get lawyers, and lawyers do all the things that they're required to do to get ready for mediation, which is super important. And sometimes, though, months pass before they ever get to the first mediation date. And I think about that, and I think about what opportunities have been lost in the 3 to 6 months compared to collaborative, where we're sitting down right away and talking about what's important to you. And okay, if you want to preserve these things for your children, how are we going to do that? And by the time we get to mediation, often, not only is there pain from the relationship that didn't proceed forward, but sometimes there's pain from those 3 to 6 to 9 months before we get to mediation, because of all the documents that have been asked for, because of the interrogatory questions, because of the letters that go back and forth with certain demands that are made, because of the documents that were filed, where people ask for everything. And the other person then is hurt and offended by the documents. And so by the time we get to mediation, we've often built more wounds. And so mediation doesn't have always the same opportunity to focus people on how to move forward in a productive way. And parents in particular, it doesn't really give them the opportunity to develop that co-parenting relationship. Where in collaborative, not only are we identifying those goals and we're talking about the concept of going forward in the future, including a co-parenting relationship when there's children, whether they're minor children or not, but we also have clients meeting with a mental health professional, working on the specific communication aspects and the parenting plan aspects that are related to how they're going to parent in the future. Lawyers are supporting those conversations. They're working with their individual clients, sort of all towards the same goals that these clients have identified. And even the financial, when you talk about the house or setting up a college fund, the financials also we're all sort of swimming in the same direction, not, sort of swimming in different directions and coming together briefly for mediation and then, swimming away again. We're all sort of swimming in the same direction toward trying to accomplish the things that the family wants to accomplish. So there's certainly value in both, but I do believe that collaborative gives families many more opportunities to have a different type of outcome, including around the co-parenting.
Right. And of course, as a lawyer practitioner for 35 years, I've done hundreds and hundreds of mediations, and there's really no specific training that lawyers get for mediation other than outside, than the litigation process as you were elaborating on there. Whereas with collaborative, there's specific training that we get. I know you're accredited in collaborative. You've done, I don't even know how many cases. Do you even know how many cases you've done?
I actually do keep a spreadsheet. And so I'm
okay.
Over 100 at this point. And the reason I keep a spreadsheet is that people often want to know, and I know that's not the topic of today, but how many meetings does it take? How long does it take? Sure. What does it really cost? What are the types of things that cause a family situation to go longer or cost more money? So I keep that data because I think it's really helpful when I'm talking to clients and they're trying to decide process options. So that's why I keep that information.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I get those questions a lot too. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, not every case is a good candidate for collaborative. You may agree or not agree. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I have a client comes in and there's been an emotional abuse or hiding of assets or something that we know we're going to need to do, unfortunately, use some of the litigation tools to uncover hidden assets or something of that nature. Not to say it couldn't be done in collaborative, but there's got to be transparency in collaborative. The parties have to agree that they're going to put their cards on the table. They're going to come. They're going to meet. They're not going to hide assets and so forth. One thing that I do in every case, even if it's not a collaborative case with a formal collaborative participation agreement, is I try to reach out to the other attorney in a very collaborative way. I call it collaborative with a small c because it's not a formal collaborative process. But oftentimes, if you do that at the beginning and say, hey, can we try to avoid some of maybe the pitfalls? Let's talk about what would be a good temporary time sharing schedule for the kids, or what are some things that we can work out together in a collaborative way, or maybe even set a 4-way meeting with the 2 attorneys and the 2 clients. And sometimes those cases, they start to see some of the benefit of working together collaboratively. And they say, wow, why don't we make this a full collaborative case with the collaborative participation agreement? And then we have the neutrals, right? So you're the mental health neutral in a collaborative case. We'll have a financial neutral. There can be allied neutrals, but each side would have hopefully a trained collaborative attorney and work together. So that's just one way I try to keep it more collaborative, even if it's not a formal collaborative case.
And you said some really important pieces at the beginning there that set the stage for all of that. And that really is, hey, I pick up the phone, I create communication with the other lawyer. And I say, hey, maybe there's some issues that we could start to identify, that we could reach some small agreements on now to help these folks, sort of settle things down and get moving. And so what you're talking about is communication and relationship. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that also helps determine whether this situation's a good candidate for collaborative, the clients as well as the lawyers. And so if you pick up the phone and the other lawyer is receptive to, let's see what we can help these folks with in the interim, and maybe we can get together, the 4 of us, and have some communication. And if you say to the other lawyer, my client's really concerned that he or she's hiding assets, and the other lawyer says, well, we want to take care of that concern. Of course, my client's going to have to, provide the information. Then you're starting to determine, does this have the potential to be either something very cooperative or truly a full-on collaborative case, even if folks at the beginning are scared or suspicious or angry, or have a history that might cause us to be concerned. As we help them make the transition, can these 2 lawyers help these 2 clients find a place where they can get all the information that they need and be able to look at some options to make decisions. And it goes back to communication and relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as the mental health professional or neutral in the collaborative setting, you're kind of the facilitator of the meeting. So you kind of take lead. It's so important how that first meeting starts out. Um, and so tell our audience kind of what we do to prepare for that. You know, obviously the collaborative team, attorneys and neutrals have pre-meetings before that first meeting with the clients, but can you give us a little synopsis so people can know what does it look like?
Well, one of the important pieces beyond communication and relationship is preparation. And so it's sort of, this is not my term, but some folks in the collaborative community have used this term, sort of setting the table. So it's perfect for,
Thanksgiving.
Exactly, our Thanksgiving conversation.
Right.
You know, you don't just come up with a fantastic Thanksgiving dinner and toss it on the table. There's a tremendous amount of prep that has to occur. And so in collaborative, we are making sure that the clients really understand the ins and outs of the process. We're making sure, as you referred to, that we have individuals on the team who have actually been specifically trained in the collaborative process and what's required to be a good collaborative team member. We're looking at this particular family as a unique family that we then set down in, again, using my table example, right? So,
right.
You know, as it were, the way tables are set are probably quite similar, household to household, in the overall structure, but the uniqueness of how everybody goes about preparing and serving a meal and setting their table really is unique family to family. And so it's that mixture of, we have sort of a structure and a system to what's often called the collaborative roadmap. It's a very simple structure and system. As long as you follow it, it works really, really well. And then we set down into that system, that preparation, the well-trained professionals, we set down in that the uniqueness of a particular family and make adjustments as needed to meet their particular needs. So collaborative requires a tremendous amount of communication. You're absolutely right. That first meeting, how we set up the whole process from the beginning is really important. And then to continue to make sure that we follow the procedures that we know work, while also keeping in mind who these people are and what their particular needs are as a family. So it's a lot of preparation, a lot of details.
Yeah, and each family is unique and has unique needs and goals and desires. And that's one of the beauties of collaborative too, that we can really explore that, give the clients a voice, because oftentimes in the litigation model, people don't realize how difficult, how formal, how rules setting with the evidentiary rules and the procedural rules in the courtroom. People say, well, I want to have my day in court. And then they get in there and, well, you can't say that because that's hearsay. And you can't say that because it's excludable as evidence. And then they feel like, wow, I didn't get my day in court. Mm-hmm. Well, in collaborative, that's one of the beauties is that the clients really get to speak into what they really want to see accomplished. And it's all in a transparent and a high trust environment. So that's really cool. I know there's a lot of questions people may have regarding, you mentioned like the cost, and I know we're starting to run short on time, but if I would just say, if anyone has any comments or questions, put them down below in that section. If anybody'd love to see Dr. Parnell again on another video and answer some more in-depth questions or more specific questions you might have, put those in the comment section below. If you found value with this interview, this video, hit the like button. If you'd like to watch future videos, just hit the subscribe button. We will post a new video right now. Every Wednesday at noon, we're posting. Before we leave, Teresa, I always like to ask a healthy tip, because this, I'm kind of the healthy family law attorney, and this is our purpose here, to provide this hope and help. So do you have any healthy tips that you'd like to leave with our audience today?
So I think what I would say that is going to sound very simple, but it's also really difficult this time of year in particular. But it becomes even more important in any time of stress, and it's a back to basics approach. So before any of our other sort of techniques are going to work to manage going through a difficult time, we have to look at, what's our sleep, what's going on with our sleep right now, and how do we practice good sleep habits while we wait maybe for our sleep to get back into a good cycle. What are we doing from a nutrition perspective? Other than Thanksgiving Day, we'll take a pass then, but what are we doing with our nutrition? How are we taking care of our body? And then what's going on with our physical movement / exercise? For some people, when they hear exercise, they're opposed to it. So thinking of it more in terms of physical movement. And so I would say back to basics first. Pay attention to nutrition, sleep, and exercise. And then once you get those aligned, then sort of see where you sit going through this difficult transition, and decide what you might need to layer into that's going to help you from there.
Those are important words, especially this time of year, and of course with what we're all going through with the pandemic. So thank you so much, Teresa. I appreciate it. Thank you for being on the channel today.
Thank you. I was glad to be here.
And everyone stay safe and healthy, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much, and see you then. Bye-bye.